As we saw earlier in the newscast, Prime Minister Mark Carney unveiled his new cabinet today, and Tom Mulcair joins us now. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Mitsumi, great to be with you.
Great to see you. So what do you think the message was by this choice of cabinet?
Well, Mr. Carney did put his own stamp on the Canadian government by going headlong into the file of energy and resource development and putting strong characters front and center on the economy. That part, I think, was a success. A little bit less successful was separating himself from the Trudeau era, because the minute you have Chrystia Freeland and Dominic LeBlanc and Mélanie Joly and François-Philippe Champagne and all the rest of them back front and center, pretty hard to argue that there's a huge break. Now, they look at the numbers and they say, no, there's a whole bunch of new faces, and we got rid of a couple of the older people, which is true. But overall, people who've been following Canadian politics for the last 10 years might be forgiven for noticing that there's a lot of similarities as well.
A lot of Quebecers in this cabinet, 7 ministers, 2 as Secretary of State, some new faces. What do you think of the choices of the new faces that he's brought in from Quebec?
Well, I think that the new faces, especially in the secretary positions, are very interesting. I think that his health minister, who used to work, of course, with Mr. Trudeau, is also an interesting choice. Overall, I mean, the main thing that I take away is that Mélanie Joly was removed from the very essential foreign affairs file, where she actually made a bit of a mess of Canada's relationship with several countries, but in particular Israel, over the current conflict there. And it was indecipherable what she had been putting forward as a position. So I actually knew she was in for the high jump over that. So she's getting science. I mean, she's going to be taking care of innovation. And it's actually going to be interesting that she's taking care of industry, because she said it herself. She's happy to have an economic file. But the reason she's happy to have an economic file is she wants to have that as a line on her curriculum vitae the day she runs for leader. So she's never had an economic file before. She'll have one now. We don't know yet in advance how it'll work, but I can tell you the banking sector is a little bit worried, because she has a very parochial view of her job as a minister. And for example, people in Ontario, where the auto sector is lodged primarily, are a bit concerned. But I guess she should be given a fair chance.
During the campaign, Mark Carney said he was the best person to take on Trump and to make Canada's economy the strongest in the G7. Do you think this looks like a government that can actually do that?
Mark Carney looks like a prime minister who can actually do that. I'm not sure that everybody who's on the front bench, although even, with Dominic LeBlanc, who was the first person up at bat, being introduced as a minister, try telling me exactly what his job is. He's going to be in charge of relations with the Americans, but what does that mean? Because that's Carney's job. Anyway, there are some aspects to this thing that need clarification, but I think that overall, Trump will be dealt with by a very competent team, and I think that Canada will be putting its best foot forward on the economy. I think that Carney really knows what he's doing on the economic front.
And is that the biggest challenge coming, do you think? Or, there's a lot of things this government has to face in the coming months. What do you think will be the biggest challenge?
Reality. Because it's one thing for Carney to have that depth of experience and expertise, and he really does. Canadians know that about him, that he has been at the highest level in terms of central banks in Canada and in Great Britain. He has been at the highest level of the United Nations and, frankly, at the highest level of the private business world. But try getting that new pipeline across Canada and getting Quebec on side. I think that one of the advantages is that Legault right now needs to deal. He needs help. So getting a pipeline might be more possible than ever. And he's going to be able to put emphasis less on the citizen-based carbon tax than he's going to be able to put on carbon capture and storage and new technologies to allow us to develop our resources, but without increasing greenhouse gases in Canada. That's the type of thing that I think that Carney's going to be good at.
But summing it all down to reality, Tom, I think you're absolutely right on that score. So thank you very much for this. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for the kind invitation. Talk to you soon. Bye.